School Committee to order. It is Thursday, September 21st. This meeting is being recorded by WCTV, broadcast by WCTV, and audio recorded by Jamie Wixton. Would you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin with public participation. Does anyone wish to address the committee? Seeing no one, we will move on to good news. Who would like to start with good news? Dr. DeAndrea.
Okay, so yes, I do have some good news. So MCAS was released this week. You may have seen the article in the paper. The district made substantial progress towards targets as defined by the Department of Education. There were bright points in all of the schools. There was some really good work done. Certainly there are areas that we need to look at and make improvement. And congratulations to the elementary school. The elementary school was designated by the state as one of the 66 schools of recognition across the state. They were selected because of high achievement, because of high growth, and the combination really brought the students' scores up. The fourth grade did a terrific job. Across the state, the fourth grades increased by 2 percentage points, and at our elementary school, we increased by 21. Was it 21?
You mean the overall?
The fourth grade.
I don't know.
In ELA, it was like 21 points. It was pretty significant. So congratulations to everyone across the district and all the hard work they're doing, the teachers, the staff, the administration. And I think it's a real positive step in the right direction, and we're going to work really hard to keep us heading in that direction.
Great, thank you. April.
I just want to give credit to the high school because this is my child's first year of college, and having the elective options that we had, and he got to do culinary for 2 years as an elective, and moving into a college with no meal plan and no cafeteria and into an apartment where he has had to cook for himself, and he has been able to do so and is actually cooking like real things and not just ramen noodles. So I wanted to give a big shout out to Chef for preparing my child for life, and I'm super grateful that we had that as an option.
Anybody else? Good news? All right, thank you. We move on to our student representative report. Gisela.
I'd also like to appreciate Chef just for being an amazing teacher and making culinary such an amazing place to be in. During the last few weeks, there have been lots of clubs starting up. We've had the Art and Film Club have their first meeting of the year. The Film Club got approved at the end of last school year and had 14 new members today, and was very proud of that achievement. Other clubs such as Model UN are starting this Thursday. And clubs such as the AV Club have a film or a video that they have been working on for a while coming out tomorrow. And these are all projects that are led by students for students. Another amazing extracurricular that is causing students to grow is the band club. They have they are performing at the football games with their pep band. They are doing things such as Music Monday with Dr. Roth, which is an opportunity for not just students who are already in band, but students who just need a relaxing 30 minutes to break up their day to come and listen to some music and have the opportunity to play music if they don't have it in their schedule or just haven't felt comfortable to do it yet. Another amazing club, such as the Drama Club, had its first auditions this week and had its first meeting. DECA is running strong as always and has been making their meetings accessible through having them during advisory as well as after school. Key Club has started its first events of the year. We have started planning volunteer events to help out at Damien's Food Pantry. We've set up a Key Club car wash, and we are planning to help out at the Wareham Library to clean up. Stuco has had lots of events started already. They have been working tirelessly to make the homecoming something special for all students, and have started their fundraiser of Cupcake Charlie's to help sponsor 2 seniors for a scholarship, and also any other profits from that fundraiser will go to any other events that Stuco plans to do in its time. We've also had our first Student Advisory Council meeting, which is one student representative from each advisory, and they represent around 12 students, all in the same grade as them. And we come together and we talk about pressing issues or even positive things that we see in our school that we'd like to keep up. And then outside of just normal clubs, we've also had sports. I've heard from football players that they are really enjoying the new coach. One other club, Yearbook, has had their first meeting, starting off their year strong. They've proposed yearbook covers and assigned members to seniors to ensure senior photos are collected. And then one other thing, girls soccer players are hoping to have a little bit more fans at their upcoming soccer events. So if you have time, they'd appreciate it if we would be there. And then something more on the academic side, seniors just had their Credit for Life meeting talking about what that's going to be, as well as our open house was today. And many students are taking advantage of the opportunities at our school, such as the independent studies that seniors are allowed to take, the dual enrollment, AP and IB classes, and some students are even taking up the opportunity of assistant teaching classes such as band. So yeah, that's some of the stuff happening at the high school.
So you mentioned Credit for Life. I saw that under the superintendent's report tonight. Is this the first time that it's back in person? Do you know?
It was last year.
It was in person last year, too? Okay. I was just happy to see that it's being held. It's a different time of year. It was always in the spring before, so.
It's spring? Yeah, I think so, it was.
They just meet, I guess.
I thought it was happening. like,
It's
at the
supposed
end
to
of
be
this month.
happening, yeah, at the end of this month it'll be
Oh, okay.
happening. But
Okay.
yes.
Actually, that's a good thing, right? So, yeah.
Brent?
I was just wondering, what show is the drama club doing?
That's a good question. We're doing The Wizard of Oz as our play. So it's a little bit of a different version. This version includes the author L. Frank Baum as a character. So
Okay.
And Gisella, I saw your interview in Wareham Week where you talked about the importance of extracurricular activities and
Yeah.
clubs again. So I'm glad you highlighted that tonight. Thank you. And you do a nice job, like, basically advocating for student empowerment. So keep up the good work. I do want to remind you that you're welcome to stay for the length of a meeting, but you're also welcome to leave after your report, especially if you have studies to attend to, or tests, or anything like that. So just so you know, that's the way it'll be all year, okay?
thank you.
All right, we move up to our next report by Facilities Supervisor Eric Trahan.
You have to vote on the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, April. We're back to our old tradition here. You correct me when I skip over something. We're going to have the minutes of the meeting first. So we have the minutes that we've had in our report from April 27th, August 31st, and September 7th. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about any of those minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 500. Thank you. And now we have our report from our facility supervisor. Eric, thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So as you know, we had 2 MSBA projects, partial roof replacement at the middle school and then a boiler replacement at the high school. Happy to inform you that the roof replacement is complete. I know there was a lot of emails sent to me, questions of when are they going to start the roof over the summer? So long story short, they were waiting on roof drains. So they actually didn't get started till the first week of August. And with the roof drains, we ran into a couple hiccups as far as abatement work for asbestos. So the timeline kind of goes as follows. So August 1st to the 9th is when they actually did the install of the new roof drains. From August 10th to September 8th, In 21 days, they demoed the whole roof and rebuilt the whole roof all the way down to the edge metal flashing. So it only took 21 days to them to actually abate everything and redo the roof. This past Tuesday, we had Paul Peterson with Sonofill, which is the material that's used for the roof, that white membrane that you guys see. And if you guys Google Earth, any of these buildings. He did his inspection because they have such a big warranty on it. They want to make sure that the roofers did everything right. And he was very thorough. He went through everything. Anything that he could get underneath, he marked it. And there was 2 roofers with Capeway right behind him, too. So anything that he marked, they fixed right there, and they got that all done in one day. So as far as the middle school's roof, that's all set and done. So fast forward till next year, the town already approved a $7.5 million budget for the remainder of the roof. And now it's just trying to work with the OPM and architect to make sure that we get this all done within the summer and not try to overlap into the school year like we did with this one. Didn't cause too much of a hiccup with students in school, but we obviously want to aim for no one there and just get it all done. Let me take a step back up to this summer's roof. So the town approved $1.5 million for this. We've only used $1,030,000 for it with contract fees. So Capeway Roofing, their subcontractors were underneath their contract, their total, the OPM and architect. So there was some contingency for the unexpected issues with the roof drains, but I do believe I haven't seen the contingency and how much the added work cost yet, but I'd say we're well under like $400,000 on the budget for that. So now, fast forward to next year, $7.5 million. I don't think that we'll hit that, but you never know. And hopefully we get the same companies to do this, and because it has to go out to public bid, so hopefully we don't get a different company. But who knows what the future holds. So any questions on the roof part before I jump into the boilers?
How'd the new roof do in the rains we had last week?
So last week we had 2 roof drains that were they didn't use lead and oakum in the seal, in the joint, in the connection, I should say, from the pan into the pipe itself. So we had 2 leaks there, but they corrected it, and when the last time it rained, we had no leaks, so we're good to go, which is a great thing. Go ahead.
Sure.
When will the bidding on the next year's, when will the bidding on next year's roof start?
So we actually have weekly meetings. We kind of held off for this week, only because the roof's done. So we have a weekly meeting for the middle school roof and then the boilers right after that. So we talked today about that just because I didn't know what questions would come up today. So I brought that up, and by the end of the year, we're going to go out to bid for the remainder of the roof. I don't have a specific month.
Is there a reason we're waiting that long?
I don't know. I can ask the architect why. I don't know if it just falls. I don't know if they're trying to close this one out before they start opening a new one. I don't know. Calendar year, yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. Jesus, yeah. No, so I honestly don't remember when we went out to bid for this summer. Was it February? Yeah, so I think we're trying to get a head start, so maybe November, December of this year to go out to bid and get this going.
Okay, thank you.
Now, this year's boiler project, everything seems to be going good. We're still working, obviously, with students there, but it's very secluded, so they can keep working while students are there. Everything's in besides expansion tanks, so that was another holdup. We had a lot of lead time issues with pumps and things, but they're all there. They're just being installed now. So the only thing left is expansion tanks, and that won't hold us up for the boiler startup. So dates to remember, we have the controls part of it. So we have our own building management system inside the boiler room, not for the rest of the building, only because the MSBA only covers the 4 walls inside the boiler room, nowhere else. So controls, commissioning will take place on October 6th. The boilers startup will take place on October 11th. And legally, we need to provide heat in that building by October 15th That's state requirement. You can't have a building without heat anytime after that. But we're good to go for that. They haven't determined a date yet for the pump startup. And right now, the main focus is just piping the rest of the boiler room and correcting all pre-existing conditions that we have there. We had some issues with mixing valves throughout the building, so just trying to get that done. Same thing with the funding. The town funded let's just say 2.5 million for this. Right now, we're just a little less than 1.6 million. There will be more extra contingencies just because of those pre-existing conditions and trying to correct them throughout the building. But I don't think that there will be anything real significant. So right now our savings is around just shy of $900,000, but I wouldn't bet that that's the final number. It'd probably be more around 700,000 or 750,000. And keep in mind, too, that this is the MSBA project, and unlike the roof for this summer that doesn't get reimbursed, everything that's inside the boiler room will be reimbursed. So, and that's it for the MSBA projects, unless you guys have questions.
To what do you attribute that both the first roof project and the boiler project came in so much below estimates?
So the architect sends all this out to a cost estimator, and I don't know if he was just being more advantageous and it made it bigger just because you need to appropriate more than the actual bids. But yeah, it is a competitive bid, so people want the job, maybe they'll bid low. That's the only input that I have on that question.
It's curious because when we did the elementary school, we also came in well below. And I actually went to the estimators process. They had this meeting where multiple estimators reconciled their bids, and it didn't make any difference. They were still way too high.
Yeah.
What concerns me is, yes, it's lovely to come in below. What concerns me is that if I'm a town voter and I'm trying to decide whether a project is worth it, and the estimates are that far off, you could literally have a negative vote that might have been positive if it had been more accurate.
Correct, yeah.
So it just seems like, I know I'm making lemons out of lemonade, but it just does seem to me that part of the cost of this project is in fact hiring these estimators, and I'm not sure that they're doing us in the end any favors.
Any justice, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to say to that, but I'm glad that they are coming in lower, but like you said, could deter people away from voting on the $7.5 million project.
If it was 10 or 20%, that would be one thing. This is really big.
Yeah.
And it makes me question the value of these estimators. Enough said. Thank you.
Yep, no worries. Good to go? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a report of the Director of Finance.
It was always much more precise.
Good evening. Thank you. So I do have one thing to add on your question, and this is just my observation and opinion, so I'm not sure if it's correct or accurate, but a few years ago during COVID, I was doing a roof project in my former district, and the concern at that time was that the contractors and the OPM was seeing high prices as a result of the pandemic. So I'm wondering if this is just a residual effect that they're still estimating based on that, and maybe if prices are coming down, we might see something a little bit different. That's just one thing that I thought of as we were discussing this, because I know that was a big concern during that time. It wasn't just getting the supplies on time or even getting them at all. It was, making sure that we estimated or had enough, thinking that what would cost something much lower was now going to be much higher. So that's my 2 cents about that. But, maybe we'll see in the next project. And, in terms of going out to bid, I think we went out to bid right after the first of the year, January, February, for both projects. And there is some advertising, by law, you have to advertise for a certain amount of time. But certainly we were at the point that we were waiting for school to end to get going. So I think, as long as we adhere to that schedule, if not sooner, hopefully we should be okay for the larger project. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But we're in good hands with Mr. Trahan. He's very well knowledgeable about the projects. So on to my report. You have August's financial report. It's very similar to what it's exact how I usually report out. There's nothing really of note in August. What I'll start doing now that we've had, today we just posted the second payroll of the school payrolls, is start looking at the salaries, what we budgeted for based on, against what's actual. There's always changes, you might hire someone at a different level. We might have a different plan for grants than what we had thought during the budget time. So it's always good to check those big budget accounts, the largest part of the budget. Same thing for, we're watching transportation, most notably the out-of-district, the vendor transportation. That's very challenging always. It's unpredictable, especially with the foster students and the homeless students. It's very unpredictable in that. It's very costly. The vendors now, we're fortunate that we have a good pool. Marie Ferreira has gotten a good pool of vendors to contact, and I think we've seen some prices coming down, whereas once, we were seeing a lot at the $300, $400 dollars per day per route. We're seeing some more favorable pricing when we send these routes out to bid, and that could possibly be a result of having more competition that we send them out to. So, but yet we're still seeing on average for the ones that we have sent out to bid this year, about $300 a day. So that's quite costly across the numbers of students that we have to use a vendor transportation for. Some of them are going quite a distance, so it is costly and it's unpredictable. So that's something I always like to keep an eye on. Of course, we talked about a lot last year and even starting this year about the electric budget at the elementary school. I'm happy to say that when the invoice that we received shortly after our last meeting was quite a bit lower. So I know Mr. Trahan and the HVAC technician, they've been really keeping a good eye on that, and I think their diligence, we saw that in our August invoice. So July's invoice is around $50,000 and August was around $34,000. So still, higher than what, than what we were seeing in the last months of last year. But, we're going to keep an eye on that. So that's something, and certainly that will be, we increased the budget this year based on what we saw last year at the time, and that's certainly something that we have to take into account for next year. So there'll be an increase for that budget line as well. So that's that. The other accounts that I'm looking at that always need to be watched is the out-of-district tuitions. And these line items I highlight because they are so large and they are so volatile at times. But right now, our out-of-district tuitions, we're in good shape for that right now. We have various sources of funding for that. We use our local budget, private and collaborative tuitions. We have a line item in a special education grant, and we also have circuit breaker. So between those four accounts, right now we've got balances in all of those accounts after encumbering all of the contracts that we have. So we're doing well there. So that's all. That's really the only comments I have that, as I'm going through, that I wanted to make you aware of at this point. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Well, I just want to say again, thank you for the great reports, and you answered most of all my questions. When you say you encumber the tuitions, do you mean for the whole year? So for the
Yes.
students that you have now? So any changes would be if someone left or came in?
Correct.
Which of course will happen.
Right, and it's already happened. So what we do is we get a contract from the placements, and as soon as we have that contract, the bookkeeper in the business office that handles those accounts, she will encumber that, and she keeps very up to date with that, and she's already notified me, hey, Kristen, this student we know has moved or has left, so I reduced that PO, so perfect. So, the information that we're looking at is always, as up to date as it can be. And as you know, that those can change. We've been talking about that the other day on a daily basis. We'd have transportation changes, placement changes, move-ins, move-outs. So it's, we're very fortunate to have the person in the business office that takes care of that is very diligent, and she does a good job with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm reconciled to the fact that I can't extrapolate percentages because of all these encumbrances. So, and I understand why you do it, makes perfect sense. So is it fair to say that as of August 31st, or maybe as of today, there are no negative surprises so far with respect to this fiscal year? Is that a fair statement?
That is fair to say, yes, yes. But I will add that once we go through all of the salaries, and now that we've got our staff and our couple of payrolls recorded, and that's the next big task that I want to tackle, is just to make sure. So at that point, if we have some, surprises for salaries, which hopefully I don't anticipate that we will, but, I always like to check. So I will say, as of now, I think other than, the electric budget at the elementary school, and maybe possibly homeless and foster transportation, those are the only two that I have a small concern about at this point. But I think the favorable part of the out-of-district tuition, will help with any deficits at this point. So it's always a balancing act where you have surpluses and where you're going to have deficits. So the important thing is just knowing.
So is it also fair to say, and I assume it's not premature to ask you this, that the number of benefit-eligible employees of the school district is consistent with what we budgeted?
I believe so, yes, because Jamie has done a really great job of compiling a complete staff list, and I've been kind of ticking back and forth to what we have in the budget versus what is actual, and I would say the answer to that question is yes.
Yeah, I just don't want to surprise Derek negatively with respect to healthcare benefits. Okay. And then just a comment. I recently read an article, and this is to make us glad that we have our own transportation department. I recently read an article that school districts have literally asked, I believe it was the Federal Trade Commission, but have literally asked the federal government to look into collusion you saw the same article, with respect to the bidding on transportation contracts to school districts, that they put them out to bid, and shockingly, they get one bid, and that just doesn't sit right. I'm sure it wouldn't sit right with both of you.
That was always my experience.
Yes. So not only do you only get one bid, but then after that first contract is up, you feel trapped because you can't go back to owning your own system, because it would cost you a fortune to re-equip yourself with all that equipment. So that made me glad we have our own transportation system, so we don't get leveraged by potentially fraudulent and collusion among the transportation bidders.
That's always a hot topic among business managers,
I'm
and what
sure it
what
is.
their percentage increase in their contracts when they go out to bid are.
Yes.
That's always a hot topic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. DeAndrea, you're up.
All right, thank you. So you have my newsletter, and I'd like to start off with a gift. We have received a $1,000 donation from Cape Cod 5 Bank to support our Credit for Life fair, which was mentioned earlier this evening. So I ask you to accept that gift.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Say 5-0.
Thank you. I also have the payroll and bill warrants as outlined in the newsletter.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we have in our weight room a universal weightlifting machine, which is in very, very poor condition and really needs to be removed and disposed of. So I would need, in order to do that, we need school committee to vote it as obsolete. So I do ask that you do that so we can get rid of it.
So moved.
For the record, that's the one I use.
Yeah.
So definitely obsolete is what you're saying.
As compared to our chair.
So we had a motion, we had a second?
Yes, I am. So we had a motion to accept.
No
Do we-
second yet.
Seconded.
Second, all in favor of accepting the warrants?
Aye.
The obsolete furniture, 500. Thank you.
Want to bring it home for like,
No, thank you.
nostalgia?
That ship has sailed.
The only other thing I just wanted to mention, I know that it was in the paper about the cell phone grant. We did receive $25,000. I think it's, Scott is in the process of putting together the committee that's going to oversee that grant. I think it's going to be something that's going to be beneficial to us. It's an issue across the state, across the country, cell phones in the schools and in the classrooms, and the distraction that they are to students. So I think that this is going to be a good conversation, a good starting point to coming up with the best way to contend with cell phones in our buildings.
Okay. Jeff?
I didn't forward this to you, but I had a member of the community question how you could spend $25,000 on this subject, and also asked me my opinion of the policy itself. And I'm going to hold off, you'll be shocked to know, talking about my opinion until I guess there's a committee. I know. I guess there's going to be a committee report to us. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement.
Yes, so I'll wait to receive the report, and then we can have that discussion. But can you enlighten me so I can share with this constituent how you could spend $25,000 on this subject?
That is a good question. So some of it will be used for the folks who are on the committee, staff that'll be working after school as part of receiving stipend for being part of the committee. Some of the money will be used for devices or pockets or locking cabinets in which each classroom will have in order to put the cell phones in. We're looking at ones in which has different cubby holes. You put the phone in, every student puts their phone in, you close it, and it locks. So the teacher has the key and teaches the class the phones are safe. And I don't know if that adds up to $25,000, but
We're going to find out.
it does, yes. So that's what it'll be spent on.
You'll be shocked to know my tongue is bleeding, but
April?
So I just wanted to ask Gisella's input while she's still here. And so what your thought is on cell phones at school as a distraction. I do know that, I've seen some of the stuff from used to get messages from some of my former cheerleaders, and I'd be like, aren't you in class? Like, why am I getting a message from you right now? So I do understand the usage, but I just would like your perspective, and then I have one other question for Dr. DeAndrea.
In my perspective, I see why it's a problem of distraction for younger students, but I also think it's a symptom of a bigger problem. I think we forget that the reason students are on their phones, for the majority of the reason, at least from my perspective, is a sense of communication, even how quite literal that sounds. I think students, there's reports on students feeling more lonely than ever, and I think when we're focusing solely, when we only have a specific amount of time when we're forced to be in school and we're only learning, there isn't necessarily, and we have clubs after school that only a certain majority or a certain population of students can can have the accessibility to go to. I don't think all students have the environment to actually communicate and have like the community that students are hoping for. So I think phones in a big way, are a sense of community for students, and I think locking them up, I think after seeing light of, even though this is quite, I guess, depressing, in light of the things that have been happening in schools in the United States for the last couple of years, I don't think is the safest option. And I think a lot of students will have pushback against that, not even just for safety, but I also think specifically seniors, as some of us are 17, 18, quite literally adults, I think they will see it as an overstep, as it is personal belonging. And yeah, I think it can be a distraction, and I do think school is obviously for learning, but I do think we're forgetting that students are using this to feel more connected to other people, not necessarily just to like play a video game or something. And I think that's a bigger problem that should be taken into account, and I don't necessarily, at least personally, not speaking for students in general, I personally don't think that the grant will necessarily be the solution, and I think it's just a symptom.
Thank you. And so that was part of what she said, was part of one of my questions to you, is because of what we've seen in other parts of the country where students were, in times of extreme situations, able to communicate with their parents, able to communicate with law enforcement because they did have their phones on them. I do understand having them be in a pocket, in a purse, in a backpack, as a matter of importance. I know that there are some students, I don't know what our percentages are, diabetics now have apps on their phone that alert them when their blood sugar is low. So if their phone is locked up and they're not getting that alert. And then my other question was, if phones are being locked up and they're not allowed, where does that tie in with smart watches, where they have the access to the data and some of the stuff on their phones on their wrist at the same time? Do you ban watches? Like, where is the line, and where does that, our involvement in that come? Where I do understand, like you said, if it's a distraction, if they're not doing their work, but I'm also, it's a different generation than what we grew up in. The way that they learn is different. The way that they communicate, as Gisela said, is different. So I see both sides. I see it as a parent who's had to be like, oh my gosh, get off your phone and like pay attention. But I also understand it from that point of view, growing up with the technology as opposed to having the technology come up later in my life. So I can see both sides of it. So I'd be interested to hear, if even part of the grant is like, the education portion of it, or if there is more information on how, like she said, separating that out.
So yes, the grant can be used for something, for that, the education portion of it. So, I mean, all good points, all good points. We have to think about the classroom is the learning environment, right? And when you allow students to be looking at their cell phone in the classroom, that is not protecting that learning environment. That is bringing in a huge distraction. And if we want them to focus on what is being taught, what the lesson is, we have to remove that distraction. Now, I understand the arguments about if there's an emergency and you got to get out and have your phone, and that's something that the committee can look at and talk about, what's the best way to contend with that. But they are a huge distraction in the classroom, and we need to deal with it.
So will this committee not only have teachers, is it going to have like other community members? Are members of the school committee going to be involved in this committee? Students, like the Student Advisory Council, like what will comprise this committee?
I would have to find out for you. I don't have the answer
Okay.
to that right now. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
I have the grant up, so, online. So there'll be right at the moment, there'll be 5 people designated to look at all of those elements that you spoke of. And I see both sides as well. But I also think that there's a huge education piece that's involved in that, and I'm hoping that the students can be part of that, like the appropriate use of cell phones. Like even just that would be really helpful, for example, and if people could live up to that and honor that, then we wouldn't be having this conversation, but that's not the case. So, not always, right? It is sometimes, but not always. So the grant is actually going to dig into all of the elements that are driving this conversation, because what Dr. DeAndrea said is true. I was in classrooms last year, and it was not, I could tell, there were so many phones, so much going on that I was disturbed by it, and I'm pretty easygoing. And this year, it's a completely different landscape. I mean, you could see kids with text, so they had a device, but they were actually engaged. They were talking to each other. They were answering questions from the teacher. There wasn't this like, it's chaotic because you're not sure where they are, right? So, and it's not an all or nothing proposition. It's not like you lose your phone for the whole day when you walk through the door. You pick it up on your way out of the class, right? So I think there are a number of issues that need to just be clarified, and this grant will help us dig in and get to a hopefully reasonable 21st century place.
Yeah, it'd be helpful maybe, I'm sorry, if the committee could speak to us after they've done their work, and we could address them at that point. Brennan, then Jeff?
Well, I was going to say, first of all, I think that that kind of committee, someone, one of the school committee members should be on that, because we're definitely going to have our input on it. As far as I'm concerned with it, I mean, I understand there's, a communications component, but we're also teaching kids to be ready for the real world. And when you're at your job, depending on your job, you can't be on your phone all the time. And I think that that's a problem that's getting worse and worse all the time. That especially, I've read stories, we've all probably seen them, news reports about how the younger generation, they're so attached to their phone, constantly with Instagram and everything, with everything going on. They are communicating, and I understand that component, but that's not preparing them for the workplace. And I have a bigger concern is, if we've got the lockers, like you said, and everyone's got a little cubby, how much time is that going to add in between classes where everyone will hold on, I don't have the combination, or where's my phone, I got put in the wrong, I mean, but I'm saying even in the classroom, even if you had, 24 cubbies, what if a student grabs someone else's phone before, there's going to be chaos with everyone rushing to grab their phone on the way out. What's our liability? Is the school going to be liable if someone's $1,200 iPhone gets stolen? I mean, it just seems to me like this is a big, big headache that just, I understand for people with emergency situations, we can make accommodations for that, but otherwise, no.
Well, it's a big headache now. I imagine them having phones.
No, that's what I'm saying. The entire idea of having the phone.
It's controlling it so we can focus on the learning, right?
Like I said, with the exception of people who like April had said, if you're a diabetic and you have an app, some kind of medical condition like that, I can understand. But otherwise, no, you can have the phone on you, but no cell phone use in school. I don't see why that's, or during class time. You can text at lunch if you want to, in between classes if you want to walk down the hall or something, but not during classroom time. It doesn't seem to me to be that big of a prohibition to say don't use your phone while the teacher's teaching. They've all got Chromebooks. They can communicate and interact with that, but having the additional text that isn't controlled, monitored, or anything by the school, like they've said, it's just going to be a distraction. But let me get your opinion on that.
I think you're right before me, though, if you want to.
Did you ask Gisela for her opinion? Or?
Yeah, I saw her hand raised. I wanted to acknowledge it. Yeah.
Okay, let me go to Mr. Sweat first, and then Gisela.
Just a point of clarification. Is this policy something the school committee will be voting on?
No.
I didn't think so.
It's not really a policy. It's going to be a procedure in the building on.
Yeah, so we may have all sorts of opinions on this,
Right.
but in the end, they're just opinions, and the principal will make a decision as to what actually happens.
How we would like to build.
Until it goes in the handbook.
Right.
Okay.
I was gonna say, eventually it'll get to us with the...
Well, that's a point, because it does occur to me, presumably it will end up in the
Ends up
handbook.
in the handbook, it will be voted on by the school.
Exactly, so after the fact, we have a view, which gets to the issue of, if we're approving something, we tend to approve a handbook for the following year, right? But if Scott changes the handbook, in the case of the high school, if Scott changes the handbook during the year, then it seems to me a policy can be in place for months before we even get to say, terrible policy. So how do you reconcile that problem?
Well, I don't see him changing the handbook. I don't see him
So it's
changing.
going to be a procedure that is not in the handbook.
Would that be something that would come before policy review if it were to become a policy or be a proposal as a policy as opposed to a procedure? Because to me, that sounds more like a policy, like a cell phone policy, sounds more like what it would be than a cell phone procedure. So I would be under the assumption it would get presented to, Scott would present it to the policy review committee, and then it would get presented to the school committee for addition to the handbook, would it not?
It would be much like any other rule that the principal, you don't wear your hood. You can't wear a hood. I don't know if it was brought to you guys whether or not.
Well, dress code is in the handbook.
Right, so yes.
Policy.
So
Right,
it's-
but if that's something that's decided on in mid-year, it's added to the handbook, then brought to you guys.
Well, the question becomes, if something is decided mid-year, should it get to the school committee before it ends up in the handbook? Because it clearly deserves to be in the handbook.
Joyce? I'm sorry, Joyce?
I haven't finished, sorry.
Okay, but Joyce had her hand up first, but okay, go ahead. I'll let you finish, and then we'll go to Joyce.
No, I'll defer to Joyce.
And we have,
All I was going to say is it is in the handbook. So I asked this question of either you or Mr. Palladino after we talked about it before. And I said, I'm curious to hear more about the cell phone policy, and they said it already exists.
right, they're going to reinforce.
So there is, I'm looking for it, I can't find it right this minute, but it is in the table of contents. So there is a policy in the handbook already that we approved.
That hasn't been enforced, and it's now going to be enforced?
I'm not sure it hasn't been.
Well, that's what we've been led to believe by Gisella's comments, both in the prior meeting and in the Wareham Week article.
And Mr. Palladino said almost as much
Yes.
at our last meeting. Okay. Gisella?
I'd just like to add, on the educational side, phones aren't going anywhere, and I think instead of controlling students to put it away, I think we should also look at avenues of empowering students to use technology for educational pursuits. I've had a global politics class where my teacher encourages us to look at current events, and I've had students pull up TikToks and show and try to like connect the lines of education in school and outside of school. So instead of just, and I completely understand why the policy that is in place right now is in place, because it is a hassle for teachers to constantly tell students to put their phones away and to not have their full attention. But I also think instead of having a box for students to lock it away, I think we need to use the information that
Is locking it away in the box in the policy now?
it's not currently in the policy, but
I didn't
we're
think so.
saying in the future. I just don't think that would be beneficial for all of the reasons listed before, but I do think the information that we gain from this grant that has been accepted, I think could be beneficial, and I think we need to look at avenues in incorporating students' technology into school, and also look at ways to empower students to not solely be focused on technology compared to controlling students. But again, there are other avenues opposed to just telling students to get off their phones. There are teachers who are taking creative aspects to blur the lines of school and outside education, and I think that's incredibly important.
Jeff, and then Joyce.
So, if the locking away the phone is a change to the policy that's in the handbook, okay, I think that's a significant change.
So I think we're getting hung up on the locking. It's either going to be pouches, or there's a concern about if we have pouches that they could be stolen. So the committee is going to look at all the different possibilities, It may, if the committee decides to bring locking boxes, then there'll be discussion about it, if there's pouches. So that's all going to be worked out.
I'm not hung up on it. I just think if they change the policy that's in the handbook, it should come back to the school committee before it's implemented. That's what I'm saying, okay? Number one. Number two, there is a nationwide, statewide academic slide in this country and this state, okay? People are trying to understand why. There are lots of people who have studied it who believe it's related to social media, and phones is a subset of social media. So just keep that in mind as we struggle to find the right way of handling this. And finally, you may be shocked to know that I was in high school in the 1960s. And are you shocked that I am sitting here today and didn't have a phone to use in the 1960s?
I am not.
You're not. Okay, so somehow I survived the 1960s in high school without a phone.
Yes.
In fact, I actually think I prospered. So I think arguing that you need a phone to prosper in your academic experience in high school falls on deaf ears. At least these ears are deaf to it.
No, Joyce is next.
Yeah, sorry.
All I was going to say is there is a policy, it does prohibit phones in the high school, and it's on page 35 of the handbook, if anyone wants to take a look at it.
We bring facts into this
None
situation.
of us really thought this topic was going to go on as long as it has.
Yeah, and actually, I'm going
It's
to
a
bring
hot
it
button.
back. It's really not an agenda item anyway right now, so I'll give Brennan last word.
I just had one more kind of comment on it. Like, my son's a junior. He doesn't have a cell phone. So what about those students whose parents, or, they only have like a simple flip phone as opposed to a smartphone? So that's going to be another concern. I understand you saying, like, look what we can do with it, but not everyone has the same level of technology. What about iPhone versus, Android? What, programs can, and apps you can download? Like, I think that there's a little bit of a, divide there with, you're going to have the have and the have-nots when it came to phones. So, again, I have to disagree a little bit with Jeff there. I understand that, you didn't have a phone back when you were in high school, but that's because they didn't have them. These guys have grown up with them. It's always been a part of your life. I mean, it's like, what if the calculator wasn't, and it might have been, I'm sorry, during when you were in high school.
Don't say electricity.
No, but you know what I mean? Is that like, people would say, I didn't need a calculator, we knew how to do math. And there's always been calculator, when I was in school, there was always a calculator. It's like, why not just use that? We're used to that the same way these guys are used to that technology, so they want to use it. Saying, oh, we didn't have it then, so how can you say you need it?
The difference
Like
is,
every bit of new technology.
we had calculators, by the way, but we didn't use calculators unless the teacher said we could use them.
Exactly, yep, I agree with you.
All right, I'm going to move the agenda. I look forward to hearing from that committee.
Somebody wants to be on it now.
So we move on to number 9, report of the school committee. First item is MCAS report requisition. And that's a fancy way for saying, what do we want to see in the MCAS report in October? So if members have specifics or data or information they want to see or how they want to see it, now is the time to make that known. So I'll wait on mine. Jeff?
You're looking for,
Yeah, suggestions for what we want to see in,
you want to get them, it was better to submit them in writing? Or do you?
no, this is right now, to state them,
Okay.
so Dr.
Well,
Schwarm can hear what we're saying.
I have a presentation ready to go, and I just need to make sure that any additional or anything else is added that you'd like to have.
So I congratulate everybody associated with producing those significant positive results on the 2023, but
Thank you.
but it's 1 year.
No, it's not.
This is not the time for this.
No, probably not.
What I would really like to know is what produced those results. Okay?
Easy, yep.
Okay? In other words, what specific changes did we make that caused those ELA and math in particular, because it wasn't science, to rise significantly. And they were significant.
They were.
But if we don't know what we did to make that happen, then this is a long discussion. But if we really don't know what we did to make that happen, then they could go back down the next year. We have to know what changes we made so that reversed. 22 went down, 23 went up. Great. But we need to know what we did to make it go up.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are you assuming that whatever that is that you're looking for happened in the span between 22 and 23?
Well,
Because that would be not correct.
okay, so why did it not work in if it's a multi-year effort, okay?
It is.
Why did it not work in 22 and then suddenly work in 23?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's very easy to answer that question.
You don't have to answer it now.
No, I'm not.
Okay. Other suggestions?
And
Brennan?
I'm assuming that what we're asking for here is things above and beyond what we'd expect in a normal report, like, year over year.
Not
kind of-
necessarily.
No, it's just like, what would you want to
I would
see?
like to know if
One-
I've done what you're looking
Well, one of
for.
the things that obviously I'd like to see, the increases over the years, the fourth graders, are they doing better, 2 years later? But one of the things that I really wanted to focus on was the kind of COVID generation, the kids that missed their first 2 years of school because of, remote learning. I want to see if we've kind of gotten them back up to speed, so to speak, with in-classroom learning, that they kind of started their, schooling at second grade as opposed to starting at, kindergarten like normal. I'd just like to see that maybe that's an area we should give those kids, particularly some more focus, if at all possible. Well, I assume we have, but I'd like to see that. And one of the other things I was wondering about is, can we see the MCAS? Like, can we actually look at the test, get a copy of it to see, to just kind of know what our kids are, like, if they're having deficits in, let's say, sixth grade English, can we see the test to see, like, what don't these kids know that they should? Because, yeah, we all passed the sixth grade, but I have no idea what it's being compromised of now. I'd kind of, if possible, see a couple versions of the test so we can know what specific information our
easy,
kids don't
right?
know.
Just
Is that
give
possible?
example.
They do release questions and
release
passages
some.
that they're not going to use again, that you can see.
It's on the website.
Yeah, it's on the website.
Okay, all right.
Joyce?
So I looked back at what you presented last year, and, everything was there, the subgroups, the comparison to the year before, so I'm sure you already have all of that.
No, didn't do it, but I can.
Oh,
It'll
well,
go
I
on
just
and on.
looked at what was there
Yep.
last year. And then, I always like to see, so a comparison between of the same groups of children
As they move?
as they move. So if they were fourth graders last year, the year before, they were fifth graders, yes. Yeah. Other than that, I think you already include everything else
Okay.
that I was looking for.
Okay.
I'd like to see a DART comparison with the DART communities literally by grade and by subject, and to see maybe visually where we stand with the rest of those like schools.
Well, I don't think they're on the list.
Also, I think it would be helpful to have maybe a very simple but a clear explanation of what SGP really is for the committee's knowledge, and mostly for the community's knowledge. So we were celebrating the high scores in SGP, but okay, what does SGP really mean? If we could have just a brief explanation of that and how it's derived, would be helpful, I think, for the community. And then I'd like to hear what areas of concern the administration has. Sure, I want to hear the highlights, obviously, and the good points, but also what are the areas of concern? I heard you say, Dr. Yandra, we still have room for improvement, obviously. So where are those, the biggest concerns?
Okay.
Anyone else like to add any information or more comments or questions?
That was a good one about the explanation about SGP.
Okay, good. All right, I think you have your marching orders, so to speak, I guess?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll move on to the Policy Review Subcommittee update.
So I don't have an update yet because we haven't met yet. We meet October 4th for the first time this year. I don't know if are we fully? Okay, so if there's anyone who's paying attention tonight that knows of a Wareham Elementary School parent that would be interested in joining the Policy Review Subcommittee, that would be extremely helpful. And as was mentioned earlier, most of the policies that we do have in the district get vetted out through this committee, then presented for vote to the school committee before being implemented in the district. So it is a hugely important part of what we do as a committee. So if anyone, like I said, knows anyone. So again, October 4th, 5 o'clock, it's by Zoom, it's a Wednesday. So any elementary school parent that wants to be a part of that can email Jamie. Email Bethany Chandler, and she will get you the information for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then last order of school committee business was the annual resolutions. So MASC, our guiding organization, makes resolutions that they give to the legislature and governor, powers to be, and individual school committees vote on these resolutions. There are 8 that we've had in our packet. And so, I mean, do you want to take us through, April, or?
Sure. So every year at the MASC joint conference with all of the school committees in the state and all of the superintendents, there is a resolution delegate assembly. So it's kind of like a caucus where a representative, as I am for Wareham, gets to be the voice for our district with these resolutions. The resolutions are put forward by different districts. Sometimes they're put forward by MASC as a directive from the Department of Ed, and they all get voted on to then get legislated and then eventually trickle back down into the districts as a policy or as a way of doing business. Some of it is stuff that we may already do in our district. Some of it is, specific to rural areas, urban areas. There's a lot of different things. So usually what we'll do is we go through each of the resolutions by number. In the past, they're very long and very wordy. So because there are written sort of as the laws in Massachusetts are written, so there's a lot of legalese. Usually we'll read the resolution 1, and there we usually go through the be it resolved part, and then we vote whether we say yes or no. We also have a right to make amendments that I would present on our behalf at the delegate assembly. So if there is wording that, if we agree with the majority of a resolution, but we want clarification, or we want, we agree with this, we'd like this to be removed, I can present that for amendment. It would get reworded and voted. It's an amazing process to see how this evolves live and in person. And I know you guys all think I'm crazy, but it's my favorite part of the conference. And I'm very excited. This, I think, is my 4th year as the delegate. So I'm very, very excited to represent us there. So the first resolution, if we want to just go one by one and vote or discuss, is Resolution 1 is full stable funding for Metco. It says, there it be resolved that the Massachusetts Association School Committees calls upon the governor and the legislature to create a stable funding structure to support Metco and its partner districts that fully funds the support provided by Metco and the cost of providing services delivered by Metco's partner districts.
So anyone have any questions on basically this resolution asking to create stable funding for the METCO program?
So METCO is the Metropolitan Council for Educational Opportunity, for anybody that wanted to know what that was. And its responsibility is for implementing provisions of Racial Imbalance Act, providing support for students, families, and receiving districts.
Do I have a motion to accept that resolution?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
I abstained. I just don't know enough about it to.
Okay, so 401? Or did you?
Unless you'd like me to.
No pressure.
Thank
Okay, so 401.
Okay.
All right, Resolution 2.
So Resolution 2 is regarding investigations and recommendations for transportation bidding procedures. So this is something that we did actually speak of earlier. The resolution reads, therefore be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees prevail upon the Office of the State Auditor to investigate the bidding practices of school transportation providers and to present such findings and recommendations as may be necessary to contain costs and make more efficient transportation services available for public schools. So whereas this doesn't necessarily impact our district, again, because we have our own, as Jeff pointed out, our own transportation, this would aid our other districts in not having to fight the fight that Jeff had mentioned earlier. So that's what we
We
would
have
be.
a motion to support this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 500.
Okay, Resolution 3 is regional transportation. Be it,
So would you mind just, basically, can we Reader's Digest that resolution at all?
yes, so
Thank
that's
you.
why I go to the be it resolved part only.
Well, that's what I meant, resolve, I mean, put the,
Even, make that even shorter?
if you can.
I can do my best. So, MASC wants to encourage the legislature to modify the language in the Mass General Law for this particular, providing regional districts the ability to charge for transportation.
And because we're not in a region, I'll be quite honest, I'm not too invested in this one, but do we have a motion to accept?
Well, I
or-
was just,
or do we not?
just going to comment. Basically, what this is saying is, if you're not going to fully fund it, let us charge for it to offset the fact that you're not fully funding, so that we can at least can be budget neutral. And it's a perfectly reasonable request, and it has no impact on us, but it's still a perfectly reasonable policy that I support.
Thank you for that explanation. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
All in
You could
favor?
make the same argument about circuit breaker.
That's true.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
I'm going to abstain for the same reason.
401. Okay, number 4.
I'll
Okay.
try to do better.
So number 4 is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the resolution reads, therefore be it resolved that MASC recommends that all districts adopt the position of DEI coordinator to work towards an anti-racist school system.
So any discussion, questions, concerns about?
So again, with these, we can propose a change to the language, we can propose clarification, we can propose contingencies for budget or where funding would come from for additional positions, but this is to just put it again before the legislature. So if there are any changes that you would like to make to this, just let me know and I will make those notes and present them on our behalf.
And this is just a recommendation from MASC.
Correct. It doesn't say it will enable it, it does say they recommend, so it's not something that would become mandatory, it's just a recommendation.
Yeah, that was kind of my question. It just seemed like, creating a new mandatory position, funding everything like that. I mean, it seems like a good idea, but I just wouldn't.
Right, and I think we could even, personally, I think we could approve this, but I would like to see it still go to the Budget Subcommittee for discussion, clarification, and
Exactly.
and prioritizing
whole
positions in the district
Yeah.
moving forward.
And again, a lot of these resolutions don't get enacted right away, even if the resolution, the delegate assembly does vote for some of these to go through, a lot of them, once they leave us and go to the legislature, there's still years of
Away.
editing and changes that would take place before anything would trickle down and be implemented
This is
district-wide.
kind of starting the process, getting the ball rolling.
It is, yes.
For it.
If I'm not mistaken, this doesn't even go to the legislature. This is just a recommendation by MASC.
Unless, but again, anything could change in the language when I get to the delegate assembly, where somebody in another district could have a proposal that it does, they could have a proposal that funding be provided. There are a lot of, it's a working document, and it, like I said, it evolves live. So most resolutions do not get voted through. It's not like housekeeping where things just get voted through as like a one big vote. It's broken down, and it's every district, and there's a lot of back and forth before it even gets to that point.
Jeff?
I hear all this, but in the end, if we vote to recommend this, then it would be hypocritical for us not to proceed to designate a DEI coordinator. And I don't want to be accused of being hypocritical. So if we're going to vote to support this, then we ought to at least say we're going to have the position, adopt the position. And I don't think we should adopt the position for two reasons. One is, do we really want a position, or do we simply want the title, somebody's responsibilities who already exists but not a new position would be augmented to include these responsibilities? Would that be a stipend position? That has budget implications. Furthermore, I have had students tell me that Wareham does a really good job in this area already, and I'd be embarrassed if we weren't doing a good job in this already. Our superintendent, as a new person to this district, Gisela, may have some opinion on this as well, but the bottom line is, just because you have a position doesn't make you, doesn't make you good at diversity, equity, and inclusion. You have to have that as part of your culture.
And I have no problem abstaining on our behalf at the delegate assembly, under the caveat that because it's not clear of where funding would come from for this, that we will abstain until there's more clarification, or as opposed to just voting no. Or like you mentioned, we are a district, I feel, that does do a lot already with diversity, equity, inclusion. I feel like it's not something that we need to work towards. I feel like as a community in general, I feel like Wareham really is ahead of the curve with a lot of that, where other districts may not be and may need somebody to come in. But over the last 2 years of the conference, there have been a lot of breakouts about DEI, and a lot of the focus has been DEI. So I believe that that's why that this resolution is in there. But like you said, it might be somebody in our district who's already doing things of that nature, and it's just tweaking their job title.
I'm comfortable with an abstention.
Okay.
Well, then I'd still need a motion to...
So I'll move that we abstain on resolution number 4.
Well, wouldn't we vote on the motion, on the resolution, then you just abstain instead of yea or nay?
We would vote to change.
Vote for me to abstain at
Yes.
the delegate
That's the
assembly.
intent
That's
of
what
my
they're
motion.
voting for.
Okay.
On the grounds not that we're opposed.
Right,
to the
not that we're
position.
opposed, but we want more clarification because of where funding would come from if this is creating a new position, things of that nature.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So all in favor of abstaining, vote yes. Is that what I'm hearing?
We're directing April to abstain. That's really what we're doing.
Yeah.
All in
Okay.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 500.
Okay, so Resolution 5 is the Massachusetts School Building Authority, and, hold on, sometimes the way that they put them, it's on a weird thing. So be it resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees calls upon the Massachusetts legislation to allow public preschools to be included in the accelerated repair program and core program, and to reinstate the program for 2024 applications. And removing an
$800,000
cap.
800 million.
$800 million cap.
Yep.
I just realized that there were 3 be it resolved
Right.
parts. I was like going backwards. It's usually the last one, but I didn't do it right.
Joyce?
So my thought on this was certainly Wareham has greatly benefited from the MSBA, continues to benefit from the MSBA, but there's nothing in here saying if they remove the cap, where the other money would come from. Right? So I would want to see, all districts that need or want to benefit from MSBA projects, be able to do that, but I just don't know. So as we all know, the MSBA is funded by sales tax, right? So, but there's nothing in here saying where if they raised it to, I don't know, $1 billion, where would that extra money come from? That's all.
And my assumption on this is that if we do raise, if they remove the $8 million cap, that's probably going to just make it so that other communities, more communities will be going after the same fund, basically. So there's going to be less money available for other projects, for other communities that want it. Like, there's only so much money in the pool right now, and if we're going to remove this cap and change it, I mean, I kind of need to know more about exactly which specific schools are we talking about that need it, because I don't want, basically I want the schools that really need it to get it, but I don't want anyone to.
So this is another one that, for example, would most likely get broken up in the delegate assembly, and sometimes they get broken up into separate resolutions. So you could have the cap removed, the language for the cap removed, and then just vote to reinstate core projects, things like that. Like, you can approve for part of this and not all of it, and we can present adjustments to the language if that's a part of it that we are not for. And if I present that as an amendment to the resolution, it will change the resolution or have that separated into its own resolution so that it can be voted on separately, and that can be proposed as well.
So I would make a motion that we vote to accept this resolution and remove the first
Remove the
part,
cap.
about the cap.
So we accept the second and third pieces of the resolution, not the first piece.
Yes.
That's my,
Okay?
Question, why are we trying to remove the cap? Why are we against removing the cap?
because there's nothing to say where that money will come from.
Well, correct, but let's assume there's money to fund 900 million instead of 800 million. Do you have something against that?
I do not.
Okay, so if we're directing April to modify it so it doesn't remove the cap, it doesn't seem to me that's a positive.
Would it
We'd
be,
like it to be as large as possible.
would it be a possibility, instead of like removing the cap, to upping the cap? Like, adjust it so the cap is still in place, but like upping it to, from, like you said, 900 million, or like, whatever it is, like upping it.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, what happens, not in theory, in practice, what happens is that the world applies, okay? And they decide who gets it because they've only got 800 million to work with, assuming the sales tax actually generates 800 million for us to use. So in practice, that limits who can benefit. If it rises to 900 million, or there is no cap at all, then it's just a function of how much the sales tax generates for the program. So I don't see any upside in in saying we don't want the cap removed.
Actually, the way that you just put that, like, because, we would have to know exactly how much the state because the state tax probably funds a lot of things, and if they put the cap on, you can only have this much in school projects, but like other municipal projects it's all out of the same budget. But if we're voting to remove the cap, but other places have the cap, then schools might get more. As a possibility. I don't know, but it still all has to get voted on, and we have to go through the approval process through MSBA anyway.
Yeah, I just don't see any downside in letting the cap be removed.
I just put it as an option if that was what people had the issue with, that we can
I have
break it
no
up
issue
or
with
vote
it.
to not have it.
So we had a motion on the floor from Joyce. Did anyone second that?
No, I think we did.
I don't think anyone seconded it yet.
Okay, so we don't have a second. So is there any other motion someone wants to put on the floor?
Simple motion, a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
410. Resolution number 6.
Okay, so Resolution 6 is School Bus Stop Arms Surveillance Act and Enforcement and Penalties.
And
That, And that is, the rationale is that right now, if somebody goes around the Cliff Note version of, if somebody goes around the stopped arm of a school bus, there's really no penalty to that person unless it's witnessed by a police officer as of now. So this resolution calls on the legislature to enact legislation raising the fine for passing a stopped school bus to a significant schedule of fines as a penalty, whether witnessed by a police officer or recorded by the bus's monitoring system. So if there's a dash cam or surveillance on the buses and they record it, that the fine can be enforced, because right now it's only enforceable if it's witnessed by a police officer. So this will increase bus stop and school safety.
Joyce?
So, am I the only one that thinks this is another unfunded proposition? Because there's going to be an expense to installing video detection monitoring systems, which I'm so much in favor of. I mean, I'd love to see that happen. So I would say, let's propose that the fines that they collect go towards the expense of
Interesting.
installing the video. I don't think you'd ever collect as much as it will cost, but
I may be wrong, but don't most school buses have camera recording in? Oh, it's only inside?
this is to record if someone were to pass a school bus.
Well, I didn't know if the existing cameras could maybe catch the angle or something of a car going by. That, it might already be on there, but yeah, I totally agree.
Does that happen?
Not on our buses, no. The buses, the cameras we have are only, they do have those, but you're right, they're expensive. It all comes with a cost.
But I think it's more, the way I read it, it's more the ability to do this in order to greater enforce this violation. It doesn't say you have
It doesn't
do
require it.
It's not
Right, it's
required.
Right,
It's not
but it gives you the
But if-
ability to use it to enforce a traffic regulation.
But it's also if, like I would say, like if it also mentions that if the bus registration plate of the offending vehicle is reported by the bus driver, that language is also in there.
But I do like Joyce's,
I just say the fine should go towards the expense of, so that we would be able to do that.
so do I have a motion to accept this resolution with Joyce's recommendation about the fines?
Second.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 500.
Okay, so 2 more to go. So this is another one, since we had this conversation earlier. This is related to MCAS. So the resolution, where is that? It's the way that they put this through. Oh, thanks. It's way easier to see on my phone. Therefore, be it resolved that MASC urges Massachusetts to develop a wider, more consensus-built strategy for an evaluation system with meaningful input from legitimate stakeholders, that MASC urges the state legislature to launch a comprehensive evaluation to investigate the extent of biases pertaining to MCAS testing and make these results public, that MASC urges Massachusetts to enact a moratorium on MCAS testing effective immediately, and that MASC urges Massachusetts to develop an alternative to high-stakes MCAS tests.
Who wants to go first on this one? Brennan?
I'll say that I have never liked MCAS. I've never met a teacher that could, even playing devil's advocate, support it. But to eliminate it immediately, that's not the right. I'm all for developing an alternative or coming up with a new system, but to just stop it altogether, then how will we be able to effectively evaluate our educational process and how we're doing in schools without it? So I don't think that we can, unfortunately, I don't think we can eliminate it. Everything else I would accept on this. I would love an alternative, but if we get rid of it, how do we evaluate our schools and the funding that goes along with it?
April?
So I think using it as a tool for benchmarking to see where we are, where we were, where we go, I think that it's a great use of that. I think one of the issues that a lot of people have is it being a graduation requirement. So for those students that don't test well, or those students that I have been in the schools working when I was working as a sub at the middle school during MCAS, where kids had high anxiety the night before the MCAS for some of the younger grades because of the importance that is stressed on those students. So I think whereas it does mention that it is like a graduation requirement, I think that is one of the biggest issues that I've heard as a parent as to people who are opposed to the MCAS. Like I said, for gathering data, I remember doing SATs when I was in elementary school and in high school to get a gauge of where you were with where you were supposed to be. So I don't think that that kind of testing necessarily is bad, but I do think that if it's being used, like you can't graduate if you don't do well on your MCAS, I think in my opinion, I think that's unfair. But I do see the importance of using it from a data collection standpoint to figure out where we are, where we compare with the rest of the state, even with the rest of the country in regards to the information that's being gathered in those two core subjects.
I'm for that. I just don't think that the MCAS effectively does that. That's my personal opinion on it, that's all.
Other comments or questions? Jeff?
The MCAS bar is actually pretty low. You don't even have to meet expectations in order to graduate. So we're asking them to eliminate a low bar, number one. Number two, maybe our superintendent or our assistant superintendent can tell us how many students have ever failed to graduate from Wareham High School after because they couldn't pass the MCAS, and I believe you can take it multiple times. Correct? Because you first take it in 10th grade, but you can take it in subsequent years if you need it to graduate. Does anybody have any data on how much it's hurt Wareham students?
I don't know.
Okay.
But I imagine if it was a problem, you would. So,
Right. I don't know of any students in that have not been able to graduate because they didn't pass the MCAS. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I don't know of any.
And finally, as I walk into Shaw's now, there's a gentleman who's trying to get me to sign something, which I have not, which is to put a ballot question, I think, in front of the Massachusetts voters to see if they can eliminate MCAS as a graduation requirement. So we can have this resolution, but people are already running with the concept of eliminating the graduation requirement. I agree with the other comments that to get rid of it effective immediately removes one tool which helps us decide whether the education our children are getting is actually a good one. So I'm not in favor of it.
I agree with, I would be okay with, one, getting rid of using it, voting for no, I see the merits of it, but I can also see, it's a lot on the teachers too. And, conversations I've had with some of the teachers, family members, or other teachers, not necessarily in our district, but in other districts where they're teaching to the test. You hear that a lot, where they feel like it's a lot of pressure on the teachers for them to perform well, or their students to perform well in MCAS, and it affects their ability or how they feel that they should be teaching versus how they're being told to teach. Just feedback that I've had from other teachers. So, again, this is one that I'm on the fence about. Again, this is not just pertinent to our district. Other districts may struggle with this more. They may have students a higher rate of students unable to graduate because of MCAS, because of the data that Dr. Schwam puts together, and because we are a data-driven district, and we follow that and make strides and improvements where we can to improve those scores. This may not be something that affects us, but there are other districts that possibly aren't able or aren't doing the work that we're doing to find out where the shortfalls are and making sure that our students are successful. So I think we're in a unique place, whereas you are so data-driven and you are so focused on the results, and that you both are in such favor of the test for a standpoint of where we stand. but other districts in the state, because again, this is a resolution that's going to affect every public school. It might be completely different in other areas that don't see the benefit or that don't have a team of people that are using it as a data tool instead. They might be using it as something else or viewing it as something else as opposed to a tool. It might be more of a hindrance to them, and it might just be perspective, and we might be in a better place because of the way that you present the data and that you use it to benefit our district that other districts don't have a you. So we're kind of much like the DEI, we're in a better place, I think, than a lot of people give Wareham credit for, to be honest. And it's something I don't think necessarily affects us, but it might be affecting a lot of other students in the state.
All right, so we're going to need to move this issue. Personally, just my opinion, I would support the second resolution about, I don't mind them studying for the biases of the test, but I cannot support the others, and certainly not the moratorium effective immediately. So I don't know how anyone wants to make a motion.
I would like to, I know Joyce wanted to say something if I let her talk
No,
first. 'cause I
that's
was
all right,
gonna-
if you want to move it, that's okay.
I was going to make a motion that we accept the first, second, and fourth, and basically accept it except for the moratorium on the test itself. Because I would like to see a new system implemented, but I don't think that we can eliminate MCAS until we have something else in place.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second for that one?
I would like to hear what Joyce had to say before we move anything else forward.
Quickly, all I was going to say is that these 4 statements, I think, contradict each other. So,
And again, this is likely something that other people might feel that way, and it might
Well,
get broken up
right.
into multiple resolutions.
but I mean, my belief is that, I mean, I'm voting as a Wareham School Committee member, right? So what other districts deal with, I have no idea. But from my point of view, as a school committee member, these all contradict each other. And I agree with Kevin on his point about the second part, but other than that, I wouldn't be able to support it.
I concur. If you're willing to make that a motion, I'll second it.
Well, I think there's already a motion.
Brennan had a motion on the floor, but we didn't have a second yet.
So the motion is no. That we vote no on this resolution.
That
But we
you
don't have that
amend-
motion yet.
Well,
My motion apparently was not seconded, so
Was not
therefore it's
seconded.
dead. Let's make a new
Right.
one.
So do we have another motion?
it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joyce, that Joyce is asking you to amend the resolution, vote to amend the resolution to delete 1, 3, and 4, and to keep 2.
Yes, thank you for.
We have a second.
And I second.
All right, so we'll take a
Okay.
vote on that
Can I
right now.
just
Yes,
clarify
go
to
right
Brendan,
ahead.
since I have to present it?
Sure.
So we will make a motion at the delegate assembly to remove the first,
What's wrong with
third,
the first one?
first, third, and fourth
Yes.
pieces of this resolution and wait and and only voting for a comprehensive evaluation to investigate the extent of biases pertaining to MCAS testing and make the results public.
Yes, that's the
Okay.
motion.
Okay. I'm just making
All
sure.
right, so we have the
that
motion and a second. All in favor of that motion and second, say
Aye.
Aye.
aye. Opposed? And abstain, so 4-1-0.
Okay.
All right, last one.
All right. So,
This one involves the superintendent, I believe. No one, oh,
No one
no,
abstained.
no one
I said
abstained.
no.
Brenna's voted no.
so 8 actually is the safe storage of firearms. So where's the last page of that? Oh, thank you. Yes, it's much easier than scrolling it around. Therefore, be it resolved that MASC recommends all districts to urge their superintendent and staff to create an appropriate communication to parents and guardians that explains the importance of secure firearm storage to protect children and teens from unauthorized access to unsecured firearms and their legal obligations consistent with Massachusetts safe storage law. Be it further resolved that MASC urges other communities to work with their local law enforcement agencies, health agencies, and nonprofit organizations to collaborate and increase efforts to inform district parents and guardians of their obligations regarding secure storage of firearms in their homes and vehicles.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
Adding to the teaching,
Excuse me?
So,
teaching it more, teaching about firearms. Like, really?
So it's,
No.
I don't disagree that that is adding to one more thing that the schools would have to do. So the only reason that I support this is because it's so important, first of all, and because you all have such a good working relationship with public safety in Wareham, that you would not be alone in that effort.
Right.
I'm 100%
We're not talking about a course, we're talking about a communication.
Right.
Yeah, communication.
I think it's just
not
sending home
teaching.
something to the student, or
Yeah.
putting something on our website,
In your
reminding
newsletter.
parents and
Right.
community members the importance of safe storage,
Yes.
or even working with Officer Baptiste during
made the motion
assemblies and
already,
things of that nature, so.
Yes.
Seconded?
All right, so we have a motion made and seconded by Brennan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 500. Any
Okay,
other business?
Can I just recap quick to make sure that I'm
Go
remembering this right?
right ahead, yep.
So we have, Resolution 1 was a yes, Resolution 2 was a yes, Resolution 3 was a yes, 4 was abstention regarding questions about funding for the position, that was the DEI question. 5 was a yes. 6 was a yes. 7 was removing bullets 1, 3, and 4, and only focusing on the study of the bias of the test. So that would be a yes with that amendment. So if that amendment, when I present it, doesn't get passed, we will vote no. And 5 was a yes. Okay. Thank you.
8.
8 was a yes, that's what I meant.
Correct.
It was 500, I wrote that next to it, so that's why I was looking at the number 5.
Thank you, April. Any other business? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. 500. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.